Welcome back here, Rabbit and Red Radio, and on the line with us right now, easy to say, a horror icon, a horror legend, and a lot of people's fans' favorites. Please welcome to the show, Mr. Doug Bradley. Doug, thank you for coming on.
Hi, it's a pleasure. How are you doing?
We're doing really well. Very excited to talk to you, and the fans of the show, and just fans of horror, were overjoyed when they knew you were going to come on, and blew up our inbox with a lot of great questions for you. But I wanted to know, how do you feel with the latest Hellraiser that's out there?
Well, I was offered it. Now the story with the film, as far as I know it, as it was told to me, I got a phone call summer last year about being in the film. My understanding is really that the film has been made for political reasons principally. It seems that somewhere around about beginning of July last summer last year, not this year, just gone, someone in the legal department at Dimension Films discovered in the small print of the contract that if they didn't have a film in front of the cameras on September the 3rd, they would lose the rights to the franchise. So in, less than 2 months, they got a movie written, cast, prepped, crewed, and in front of the cameras. They had a shooting schedule, I understand, of 2 weeks and a budget of $150,000. And I was given a direct quote that came from Bob Weinstein to the production company: "We don't give a shit what you do, just get the film in front of the cameras." Now, that did not seem to me to be a serious attempt to reinvigorate the franchise or move it forward or whatever. I did ask to see the script, which was written by Gary Tunnicliffe, who people will probably know has done my makeup for the last 5 movies. It wasn't a terrible script. I didn't think it was great. All things considered, it was a fairly easy decision for me to say thanks, but no thanks. I have seen the trailer. I have not seen the movie, but I believe it's out there now.
It's very tough to find. Now, with all that information, I was just finding that out. Was Clive the first person you called? Did he know about this? Did Clive Barker have any understanding?
I emailed Clive, or to Clive's assistant, as soon as I had that first contract, and I basically said in the email, I assume you know about this. And I got a reply in about 20 seconds, which was basically saying, "What the fuck?" Thanks for letting us know. No, we knew nothing about this.
Now, say let's just pretend you wanted to do this film and Clive didn't want you to do it. Would this be something that you would have to do with Clive's blessing, even though you're an adult, but he is a good friend of yours?
Yeah, he's a good friend of mine, and fuck him. If I had wanted to do the movie, I would have done the movie. If he had, if it'd been the other way around, if I thought the script sucked and he was saying, "I think you should really do it," I'd have listened to his arguments. But if I didn't want to do the film, I wouldn't have done it. But no, he's not enthusiastic about this film. I can assure you of that.
There was he put something out on Twitter about it coming from his butthole, pretty much along those lines.
Did he?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was. That's Clive at his best, as you know. You two started out very early, and that in itself has to be. I can't imagine that you guys met in secondary school, and
That's correct.
And that has to be amazing. That's a Hollywood story in itself. You get a big film like Hellraiser, and this is one of your first films to get that kind of a role.
It was my first movie.
And Clive's right there. So that's something that hardly ever happens. 2 friends coming together like that. Is there still a magic, do you think back on, with the first Hellraiser?
Yes, I mean, I guess so. Certainly with the first movie, there were a lot of happy accidents. You know, there there's so much that can go wrong in making a film, and everybody kind of, arrives together day one, and if the chemistry isn't good, if people basically don't like each other and aren't getting on well with each other, and bad decisions have been made, casting decisions, employment decisions, you're in trouble. But Hellraiser was a perfect storm in a good way. Now, it was Clive's first movie as well. He had not directed a grown-up film, so to speak, and he had Robin Vidgeon, who was the DP on the film, working alongside him, and Robin was fantastic. And Clive did not know the ins and outs of lenses and the technical details of cameras. He had his artist's eye, and he could say to Robin, I want it to look like this. And Robin would say, okay, well, if you want to do that, we can do this, do that, do that, do that. And Robin was just fantastic support for Clive, brilliant support for him, and is a lot of the reason why the movie looks as good as it does. Casting decisions, right down the line, were great. I mean, Clive really found Ashley and fought for her to get the part. Claire Higgins, it's just a great performance. Andy Robinson, great performance. Really right the way through, there was barely a weak link. There were one or two, but no names, no pack drills. And then on top of that, you had Christopher Young's music, and I've always credited Chris with at least 50% of the power of the film. His score is brilliant. His score for Hellbound is, I think, even better than the score for Hellraiser, but it lifts the film to a whole other place.
And
so an awful lot of things came together.
And that is the movie magic itself, because it wasn't a big budget movie back then, but a lot of fans took to it. This is something that's curious to me as a horror fan and just a movie fan, and I always wanted to get your take on this. We talk about the big three when it comes to horror, which is always Halloween, Friday the 13th, and Nightmare on Elm Street. Where do you rank Hellraiser into those? And you throw the other franchises in there, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Do you feel Hellraiser doesn't get enough respect?
I think he gets plenty of respect. He seems to me to get more and more respect as time goes by, which is interesting. And I can offer you no explanation of this. I don't know about ranking. I wouldn't know where to begin with ranking things. I suppose I've tended sometimes to feel that we're kind of in a corner on our own. Where was I? I think I was at doing a Q&A at in Toronto, Rue Morgue's Festival of Fear in Toronto a couple of months ago. And the guy who was moderating it talked about Hellraiser as being the black sheep of the franchises. And it was an interesting phrase, and I'd never heard it before. And it sort of makes sense in some ways. It's not as cuddly a thing, perhaps, as some of the others, because of the sadomasochistic content. I don't know, but it's for other people to do ranking. I'm just, I'm just acting.
This is one of the questions from one of the fans here. This is actually a very good question. This is from Tony. He asked you, what did you first think about playing the role of Pinhead, and did that image change after you played the character?
Wow. Well, what I knew when I was first approached about playing it. Okay. So many disparate elements to that. I'm not quite sure where to begin. I think the first thing I was probably thinking was, I'm going to play the monster in a horror movie, and that's fun. I'd been a fan of horror movies as a teenager before I knew I was going to be an actor. And then you get into the detail of thinking about playing the character. The history between Clive and I was a huge advantage to me. We'd spent 10 years working in the theatre together before the movie came along. So I suppose I had an intuitive feeling about Clive's imaginative world and what he was aiming at with Hellraiser and with Pinhead. There were a couple of characters that I'd played on stage who were not a million miles away from Pinhead. So I could look at the screenplay and kind of get a feel of what he was aiming for. And then, of course, I was able to talk to him directly about the character as the person who had quite literally dreamed the character. In the thing that changed for me in reading the screenplay and through the making of the first film was to kind of shift my focus about playing a monster, because I think one of the things that stands out about Hellraiser is that actually the humans are the monsters. It's Julia and Frank who are the monsters, and Pinhead is kind of like an impartial judge in the whole thing. So I shifted my focus slightly from my first response. As far as the subsequent movies go, I tried to start afresh each time, and always take the lead from the script and try and forget what had gone before.
Well, I think everybody agrees when they say they love you as the character, and this shines true with, this was from Chris, who said, he asked you this question: will you ever play Pinhead again? We love you. And I'm sure you get this all the time.
I do, and thanks to Chris, and thanks to all the fans. The fans are extraordinarily loyal. As far as playing the character again, I don't know. I'd say never. I think in terms of my decision not to have anything to do with Hellraiser Revelations, apart from what I've said already, I have not played the character since the back end of 2002. So I think inevitably, to some extent, I had drawn a line in my own mind, and it would need something extraordinary. It would need something exceptional, or something that I could look at in the script and say, now there's somewhere we never went. There's an aspect of the character that was not explored. Something that would get me excited and make me want to get back in the saddle, so to speak. But there also tended to be a kind of formula developing with the movies where Pinhead would turn up at the beginning of the film, do something faintly unpleasant, then disappear for the rest of the movie and turn up again right at the end. And that formula was kind of repeated with Revelations. And, I'd been there, got the T-shirt, the baseball cap, and the mug, and, it would need something a little more than that. I know that Clive, in terms of talking about the remake, and I don't know, before you asked me, I don't know anything about the remake in terms of specific plans. He had made the point that it's 25 years since I originally wore the makeup. I am 25 years older, and time and gravity has done what it does. And he was suggesting that rather than try and fight that, they should use it and create an older, maybe a tireder, darker, bitterer, nastier Pinhead if they were going to do the remake. It would take that kind of imaginative thinking that, Clive just has in spades before I think I would really be enthusiastic about playing the character again. That or a very, very large payday.
Well, the money, of course, always helps, and any decision making.
Nothing wrong with that.
This is one of the last questions from one of our fans. It's actually a moderator on one of the bigger websites here. Michael asks, this is a really great question, I feel. What is your favorite line and scene from all the Hellraiser movies?
So, favorite line? I was kind of well served. I had a few of them. I don't know that it's necessarily a favorite, but it was the line that I first kind of jumped on. I read the screenplay for the first time, because I remember making a note next to it, which was I wrote something like, "It's a gag, make them laugh," and it was "No tears, please. It's a waste of good suffering." Because it struck me that it's a funny line. It is designed to make an audience laugh, but with a very uncomfortable undertow that goes along with it. So that was the first line that kind of jumped out at me. As far as scenes go, I think all the scenes in the torture chamber in the first two movies, but I also go always to was the scene in Hell on Earth, the third movie, when Joey goes back to the nightclub after I've laid waste to it, and she goes into that side room, and I always referred to it as the audience of death, where I've set up that kind of audience of dead people, rearranged them. And then I emerge from the back of the room and have that conversation with Joey about the suffering of strangers, the agony of friends. But that's a scene that always stands out. But there were a lot of them.
There's a lot of memorable scenes from Hellraiser, and that's why I always feel, because we always talk about the big ones, but Hellraiser, what the fan said at Toronto, is correct. It's a great franchise, but it almost seems like the bastard stepchild, if you will. But the fans love it.
That's cool.
Before we wrap up, I always want to know this, and this is just myself here. In your opinion, best band ever to come out of UK, best rock band?
Oh, well, that's hands down, no contest, no problem. Bear in mind, I was born and raised in Liverpool. They are still the greatest band. They are the Beatles, of course.
Now, this is my next one, because I thought you were going to go in that direction. I almost, it is a hands down.
Well, I was 8, 9 years old in 1962, living in Liverpool, when Love Me Do charted for the first time. I was just discovering that something called pop music existed, just as Liverpool and the Beatles were about to become the center of the whole thing. But they and Lennon in particular, they were. I mean, the standard cliche applies with the Beatles. They wrote the soundtrack of my childhood.
And millions have said the same thing, but it's true from that generation, and they still are the greatest. Most overrated Beatle. Is it Ringo Starr, as everybody says?
Is what? Say again?
Everybody says Ringo Starr is the most overrated Beatle. Is that true?
Overrated Beatle?
Yes.
Well, there was that great throw-aside comment that John made, I think. I think it was after one of the NME award, poll winners' concert. The Beatles had won everything, collectively and individually, except for Best Drummer, which I think had gone to either Charlie Watts of the Stones or Keith Moon of The Who. John was asked if did he not think that Ringo was the best drummer in the world. John said he's not the best drummer in the Beatles. I think that was John's dark humor. John loved Ringo, and They always said that if John had an idea that Paul didn't like, John would argue furiously with him. But if Ringo didn't like it, that was the end of the argument. If Ringo didn't like it, they weren't doing it. I think Ringo is a great drummer. So, is he the most overrated Beatle? I don't know. He did his job. What else can you do?
Exactly. And it's just the public perception. A lot of people forget that he had to switch what type of drum style he had to do because of TV cameras back when they made the Ed Sullivan debut, which is a little bit tough.
And you listen to his development as a drummer from what he's doing in 1962 to what he's doing even just 3 years later with all the runs and backfills that he's doing on Revolver, really complicated tracks. Like Tomorrow Never Knows, and she said, he was no slouch.
Exactly.
Okay, the guy can sing, but, not all of us are blessed with that. It wasn't his job.
Oh, exactly right. And if you want to talk more Beatles and, of course, Hellraiser and everything else with Doug Bradley, you can catch him. You'll be in Cincinnati, Ohio, November 11th to the 13th, Horror Hound Weekend. And you also have another event coming up you just found out about.
Yeah, this has just bubbled up in the last couple of days. I believe that it's so recent, I'm not convinced of this myself, but I believe the convention is called Crypticon, and it's in Minneapolis. Not this weekend, Halloween weekend following.
Well, you can get it from November 4th to the 6th, Friday through Sunday. Okay. Last question before you go. This is just throwing it out there. If you could let's go back to the Hellraiser. If you could give the puzzle box to any of the Weinsteins, which would it be? Bob Weinstein? Would you give the box to?
Yeah. I think I'd better draw a diplomatic silence over that question. I think they can share it. Joint award.
There you go. You got to spread the love. Remember, you catch them at Horror Hound Weekend. Doug, thank you again for calling in Rabbit and Red Radio.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.